Hello again. I'm back as promised with part 2 of Space Captain Smith, and by request of that Geeky Kid's weird blog. Blame her for putting you all through this. I shall continue from where I left off. Smith parked his car, collected the ticket and took his bag from the back. He wore his fleet uniform, the jacket open and his waistcoat fastened underneath. He was excited and slightly nervous at seeing his new ship, and had spent 15 minutes in the toilet before setting out, waxing his moustache to a level of pertness, carefully chosen to suggest to his men that he was both a waggish friend and someone whom they should never, ever cross. The VID00018 Shipping Company owned 3 spacecraft on New London, and part owned 8 more with the East Empire Company. As with most companies governed by imperial law, its members owned shares in the corporate property. Consequently, Smith had always regarded the company vessels as his own, and smiled proudly at the thought of the shiny spacecraft, waiting in the hangar, its brasswork polished and engines gleaming. On his way down the slope that led into the hangar, Smith met Winston Parker, the master engineer. Parker, a slight dapper man, was a source of awe to Smith. Not only did the engineer manage to sound like he knew a lot about spacecraft, he actually did, which was rare in the industry. He was the right person to get rather than his colleague Bancroft, who was both very dour and bore excuse me, and bore a curious facial resemblance to a tree. "Isambard Smith, and how are you today?" "Fine, thank you. I'm just off. Have you seen the Voster?" Parker wiped his hands on a rag he wore in his belt like a badge of rank. "Yep, your android pilot's already on board. It's a woman this time. You've got a Sheffield light freighter." "I don't think I've seen one of those before. Do they fly well?" "Not too bad. Of course they can't read maps or reverse properly." "I meant the ship." "Well, they got it second hand. It just come out of refit. New engines. Not exactly the company flagship, if you see what I mean." "I see. By the way, you haven't seen an alien around here, have you? About 6'8", with a face like a cross between a boar and an upturned crab. Probably carrying a spear and a bag full of severed heads." Parker shrugged. "I dunno. It gets busy here." "He's got an unusual laugh." "Oh, that bloke. He's down the bottom of the ramp. You know him, then?" "He's my friend," Smith replied. "I'll see you later, then, shall I?" "Much later from the route you're taking. See you soon, Smith." As Smith approached the bottom of the slope, a figure hopped down from a stool where it had been crouching. It was man-shaped, roughly, but stretched, taller and thinner than a human being. The creature loped towards Smith with the weight on the front of the feet and with a slow, lazy grace. "Suruk," said Smith. A low rattling sound came from the alien as he stepped into view. Smith saw the grey-green skin where it was not covered by his trousers, boots or armoured waistcoat, and he watched as Suruk the Slayer's tusks slid apart and his mouth opened up. "Isambard Smith," he spoke as if through porridge. Suruk straightened his fingers to show Smith his empty hands. Smith pulled his sleeves back and displayed his palms, as if about to pull a bunch of flowers from the air. "Hail, Suruk, warrior of Clan Amatrin. I give you this much greeting." "Hail, Isambard Smith, who is called Mazuran in the speech of the Malak. I give you greeting too." There was a little pause. Smith smiled awkwardly. "So," he ventured, "it's been a while." "Indeed. Moons have passed since last we met. Battles fought and enemies fallen. At the bridge of Anrag, I took 15 heads. I overthrew the tyrant a good war scythe and took his cattle as tribute to my skill. It was a glorious day." "Sounds pretty wild. I'm having a new patio put down. You and me both, eh?" "Square slabs or crazy paving?" "Square slabs."
"The choice of a warrior."
Suruk picked up his pack, from which several short-handled spears protruded, and slung it over his shoulder. With spare hand he picked up the bar stool. His physique meant that he was more comfortable squatting high up than sitting down. Smith had seen his friend sleep that way, like a nesting hawk. They walked through the vast, shadowed hall, their voices echoing up to the concrete roof. There was something cathedral-like about the hangar, almost sepulchral. The ships were housed in massive bays that stretched off to the sides like transepts. Colossal arches closed over the bays, decorated with leafy swirls etched into the concrete in the new Gothic style of Britain and its colonies.
So now, do we go to bring battle to our enemies, Isambard Smith?
Zurich tended to treat any expedition off-world as a cross between the cheap package tour and the Roman conquest of Gaul, with Smith in the role of red-coated compere to whatever bloody mayhem he decided to unleash. For the Malak, space travel was a ticket to sun, sand and severed heads, the first two being highly optional. Smith decided to allay Zurich's hopes. Not precisely, no. We're actually going to collect someone from a space station inhabited by pacifists.
Fierce warrior pacifists?
No.
Edible pacifists?
I would advise against it.
Will we then deliver this coward into the sun?
No.
Is anything good going to happen on this holiday?
Not by your standards, I'm afraid. Still, our ship's apparently just been refitted, so we should be pretty safe. I should imagine it will have some decent weaponry to see off enemies.
Ah, yes, like the mighty dreadnoughts of your British Empire. Still, I would rather fight with my blades than use a gun.
Needs must, Zurich. We can't civilize the galaxy without dreadnoughts, you know. Sometimes we have to use force to teach our enemies to behave like proper people. Now, we should be here. Oh. The nose cone of the John Pym poked out from one of the alcoves in a slightly furtive manner, as if it had crept in to receive an accolade that it did not deserve. The front end of the ship reminded Smith of the snout of a rat that had been in many fights with larger, more vicious rats, battered, dented, discoloured and scarred. At one point a great slab of steel had been riveted on, sealed around the edges with foam from a can. There was no gun in the nose.
Interesting, Zurich said. This vessel has clearly fought many battles. Is that camouflage on the upper part, or just mould?
My God, said Smith. I thought they said it had been refitted. It looks terrible.
Maybe, but the orange war paint will bring us luck.
I bloody doubt it. That lucky orange war paint happens to be rust. The sooner we launch, the better. Let's get going before the wings drop off. He walked around the side of the ship and down its length, reminding himself that this was a space vessel and not the choose toy of some very large, enthusiastic dog. Even in this bad light it was clear how much of a beating the craft had taken. Extra armour was welded over blackened patches that could have been the result of dramatic space battles or drunken parking attempts. The few windows were scratched and had a dirty greenish tinge, as if viewed through pond water. Smith had an image of the previous pilot, joystick in one hand, hip flask in the other, whooping like a redneck as he bounced from world to world in a state of crazed exuberance, frequently mistaking the nose going for a deceleration tool. And I'm sure I've bored you long enough, so we'll leave this here and keep an eye out for part 3, my friends.